This week in Agribusiness, serving America's most essential industry, with agriculture broadcaster Orion Samuelson and yours truly, Max Armstrong, and featuring agriculture meteorologist Greg Solier. This week in Agribusiness is brought to you by Firestone. You never farm alone.
Carbon programs continue to pop up in agriculture, but are they here for the long haul? Hello folks, welcome to This Week in Agribusiness. I'm Mike Pearson here in the studio this week, but we'll be checking in with Max Armstrong, and he had a conversation with Lisa Streck. She's the head of Bayer's carbon program, and he's got some details for us.
Carbon. You're hearing so much about it, of course, in farm circles now, Mike. Everybody you talk to is talking about carbon. Let's get an update from the folks at Bayer. Lisa Streck, Carbon Program Lead with Bayer, joins us here to talk about it. There are a lot of programs out there, and I'm sure they're not all a carbon copy, if you'll pardon the expression there, Lisa, but give us a little bit of an update on what's happening with you folks at Bayer. I know you were one of the early ones here.
Thanks, Max. And good morning to you. And this is definitely an exciting space. And here at Bayer, we're really excited to be one of the key players in the space. So with our Bayer Carbon Program, we'll pay growers for implementing climate smart practices such as no-till or strip-till on their farms. And in responding to grower feedback that we've received from our program, we've made really two big key enhancements for the 2021 program that I'm really excited about. So first of all, we've greatly expanded our geography. So we've added 8 additional states to our eligible geography for this year. So that puts us up to 17 states that are eligible to participate in the program. And then this year, also new, growers who have previously adopted these practices since 2012 can now enroll in our program. And we made that change based on some of the feedback that we've received for growers.
Lisa, what is the approximate geography of those states? I mean, from where to where? What areas are we talking about? Are they all contiguous states, by the way?
No, so we've got great coverage over the Midwest for sure. And then we've got some states and some other geographies. So new this year for some states that are participating. I'll just give you an example of a few. Louisiana, Mississippi, Maryland, and Delaware are now eligible this year to participate. And then we've got great coverage over the core Corn Belt states.
Do you envision maybe expanding that further, or is this just about the geography you'll stay with?
Yeah, we expect that we'll continue to expand the program in the future from a geography perspective.
How is the Bayer program different from others out there?
So our program is unique in that we pay growers for adopting practices on a per acre basis. So we know that growers typically calculate their ROI on a per acre basis. So we wanted to structure our program that way for growers. And then we also know from feedback that we've heard from growers is they like the certainty of our program. They know how much they're going to get paid on a per acre basis after verification and validation. And then they also like the simplicity and the flexibility of our program, where growers can simply choose the field they want to enroll in the program, what climate smart farming practice they're going to adopt, and then we take it from there and work through all the verification and validation steps. And as we've built this program, it's been key for us to make sure that we keep the farmer at the center of our program, because we know for programs to be successful, it has to work for farmers. So we've spent the last year listening to farmers, getting their feedback, and incorporating that feedback into our program.
What kind of a term of this program can we expect? In other words, are you guys in this for the long haul? I mean, will it be continuing for years as you envision it now?
We are, and that's one of the key reasons we're in this space, is because we're committed to helping develop carbon markets for the long term. And we know that's important from both an environmental perspective, and it's also important for farmers to connect them to this revenue stream for the long term. So we've really built our approach on a science-based approach, and to help provide reliable carbon credits to the market that deliver value for the grower both now and in the future.
The revenue stream that you mentioned, one can imagine at certain times, as you look back over the farm economy of the past few years, that could be crucial. With commodity prices being what they are right now, do you sense there's maybe not quite the excitement that there could be if prices for grains were lower?
I think farmers are shrewd businessmen and women and are always looking for opportunities to connect to additional revenue streams, but not only the additional revenue streams that implementing these practices provide, it also improves soil health. And we all know how important that is to farmers to have healthy soil to leave that to future generations. And then in this commodity market, right, healthier soils definitely lead to higher yields in this high commodity marketplace.
What's the best way for a grower to learn more, Lisa?
So encourage growers to go out to our website at bayercarbon.com. Enrollment is live today. So that website, we've really built it to help growers understand our program and answer any questions that they may have about our program. So bayercarbon.com for all the latest information.
And enrollment is already underway then, correct?
Enrollment is live and open today.
Lisa, thanks for the visit. We sure appreciate it.
Thanks, Max.
Lisa Streck, Carbon Program Lead with Bayer, joining us this weekend.
Well, it's time to talk markets. The volatility continues, and to help us make sense of it all, we've got Naomi Bloom from Total Farm Marketing joining us. Naomi, USDA released their May World Agricultural Supply and Demand estimates this week, and it doesn't look like the markets have been too thrilled. What happened in the corn market?
Yeah, for the corn market, the report was pretty much as expected for the old crop, but the problem was the new crop. They didn't give us quite the bullish sentiment that the marketplace was hoping for. So in the big picture, there's two things happening. The ending stocks for this year and for next year are still historically tight. That has not changed. We should not see a dramatic price fall out lower for the short term. Now, I will add, though, what the USDA did do, they did reduce demand for exports next year. They raised ethanol demand, but the bottom line was that the ending stocks for the new crop season just weren't quite as tight as what trade was hoping for. And one piece to keep in mind, too, is that the USDA pegged in there a high trendline yield, which was actually more like a record yield amount, 179.5. So for yield that is really, really aggressive this early in the game, to think that we're going to be able to have that kind of a production number, especially with as dry as it continues to be out west.
Absolutely. But Naomi, I mean, the corollary or the counterpart I hear to that high yield estimation is that they're using perhaps a lower acreage number than we might end up seeing. So even if the yield comes down, total acreage might still increase. What do you think?
Well, that's a good point, and that is what we could see on the June 30th report. But there's a good 5-6 weeks between now and then. So the marketplace, it kind of feels like the USDA is maybe hoping that more acres get planted, and they're just maybe thinking that if they lower some of that demand use now, there's room to let it grow as we go forward. But who came in and bought on the sale as the markets worked lower in reaction to the USDA report? China. They've been buying a lot of corn for the new crop year, so they're taking advantage of the price. And if you look at even where old crop prices are, if we've got $7 corn here in the United States, corn is $8 in Brazil and still $11 within China. So we are still the cheapest game in the world from that standpoint.
So do you think, as you look at new crop exports, Naomi, that they are still going to prove out to be pretty decent here for this new crop, both corn and soybeans?
Well, I think they'll be strong. I think that they maybe won't be quite as strong as last year because the prices were so cheap last year. But I think they're going to definitely be over 2 billion bushels. And it's okay that they reduced it a little bit right now because that lets them have the ability to expand them in the future if they need to.
Well, let's talk a little bit about soybeans as well, because post-report we saw both corn and soybeans sell off. Naomi, what was so disappointing on the soybean supply and demand estimates?
Well, nothing really disappointing there. Soybeans continue to be the friendliest story in the complex. The USDA again kicked the can down the road for a third month, not budging on that old crop number for soybeans, keeping ending stocks at 120 million bushels. But for the new crop, they used kind of a higher yield number, not quite as high as what yield was expecting, but they did reduce the demand for exports as well. But they did raise demand for crush, and that makes sense with 2 new plants getting built right now in the Midwest. There's going to be strong demand there and strong demand for biodiesel. But they kept ending stocks for the new crop year at 140 million bushels, and trade was just hoping it'd be a little snugger than that. And again, the soybeans continue to be the friendliest story in the complex. So lots of exciting things to come.
Lots of exciting things to come, to be sure. We'll be back for those with Naomi Bloom. This portion of This Week in Agribusiness is brought to you by the Soybean Checkoff. Tips, videos, how-tos, and more. If it has to do with ag tech, you'll find it in the Tech Tool Shed, your unbiased one-stop resource. We're chatting markets with Naomi Bloom. And Naomi, you mentioned that we are seeing very strong grain price values, so that is also encouraging a lot more wheat to be used in the feed ration. What other stories are developing out in the world of wheat right now?
Well, the biggest story continues to be the dry conditions in the plains and in the northern plains. So we're not out of the woods yet in terms of making sure that the crop is going to be as maybe potentially as large as it could have been. And a lot of producers in North Dakota are still quite concerned about how dry the conditions are there. And then even in the canola countries within North Dakota and going into Canada, it remains dry there as well. The wheat for the Minneapolis price was able to get up to the $8 mark last week, and that was a major resistance area technically. So it makes sense that we saw a little bit of profit taking. Spring wheat story, though, isn't done yet, and we are going to see more demand for wheat as a feed substitute, not only here in the United States, but around the world between now and I would say even harvest next year for the corn market.
Well, I know a lot of livestock producers have certainly been suffering with this massive run-up in input prices. Naomi, we've got Class 3 milk prices right now in the $19 range looking out over the summer contracts. Is that a price level you expect to hold for dairy?
Right now, that marketplace has been in a sideways trading pattern, and we are now starting to see it, though, work to the upside of those ranges, and the deferred contracts have been trending higher. Again, because of the higher feed costs expected, also because we're expecting with those higher feed costs, production comes down. Two new pieces of information hit the marketplace this week. We had really, really good cheese prices for the blocks and the barrels, so that pushed the Class 3 futures prices up really nicely on Wednesday to a limit up move. And then there was some news that emerged that the government is going to be doing a butter program where they're going to be helping people who were butter producers and had losses during the pandemic. They're going to be helping them financially. So that's something that's going to be supportive to the market, probably not right away, but during third and fourth quarter of next year. But overall, milk prices still in an uptrend, so that's really good news.
It is, and I know some of the other livestock producers are seeing that as well. Hog prices, Naomi, continue to stay elevated even if they're no longer at record highs. What's your take on this hog market looking out over the summer?
Yeah, it continues to be the export, so the export demand. Of course, as you know, the export market has been hot and heavy this whole year, a little bit more than what we were anticipating, as we all had initially thought that China was going to be rebuilding that herd and they would be having their production numbers higher, but they've been not needing to be importing hogs from the United States. So that's the market that we have to watch in the coming weeks and months, is the hog exports, because now Brazil is starting to become a bigger competitor also. They're doing more hog production, and Brazil is also exporting to China. So as long as the export market is there, it's really exciting, it's encouraging. But every week we have to be monitoring that, because if there's any sign that the export market is starting to tail off, that's going to really weigh on prices.
It's going to weigh on prices. And Naomi, would you see it dropping things back down into the 70s and 80s for a price level for lean hogs?
Boy, I hope not. I guess I'm not quite sure about that. That seems like maybe a little bit aggressive, but time will tell. And with high feed prices, it's really changing the game for a lot of the protein industry right now.
It certainly is. Naomi Bloom, Total Farm Marketing, thanks for joining us.
Chad Colby's look at agriculture technology comes your way next, brought to you by the IBM Watson Decision Platform, combining AI with Internet of Things data to help agribusiness increase yields, improve quality, and drive sustainability.
The technology for drones on the farm has changed a lot over the past 10 years, and a lot of us kind of feel like we're left in the dust. If you want a basic drone for field scouting, Chad Colby has it for you.
Are you curious what a great starter drone might be for your farm or ranch? Hi, everyone. I'm Chad Colby, and on this week's tech segment, I'm going to show you a great drone to begin with. You can see already, this is a very compact system. This is a system from a company called FlyingAg.com. It's the DJI Mini 2. Comes with everything you need, including that case, extra batteries, the charger, the cords, extra propellers, all those things, and most importantly, that drone. This drone, honestly, is lighter than a can of soda, but I want to show you how easy this is to work. I've got the controller hooked to my phone, which you can see the screen recording right here, and look at this automation. You saw me hold down that button.
Takeoff.
Auto takeoff. This is a 15-mile-an-hour or so wind. Took right off. It's waiting for my input. And now what you're looking at, the bigger screen, that's the recording coming out of the drone. And, of course, you're looking at the screen recording from my iPhone. Now, there's a lot of things here to talk about, so I'm going to hit some of the high points. You already saw the auto takeoff. It also has auto land, which you'll see here in just a minute. But it also has a lot of functionality in regarding the camera, because that's really what's most important. Even on this windy day, you can see that the data is excellent. Maybe you want to take still pictures of this flooded area you see in the field here. Maybe you want to record a video. And the best part is once you do that, that data can be, if you choose, can also be right on your mobile device, on your phone, which you could then forward to your agronomist or whoever you need to. And I think that's what's neat about this technology. The other thing I get a lot of questions on is the price. You know, what's this going to cost? I could tell you this kit is under $800. And though may that seem like a lot of money to you, and I get it, it is, you know, a GoPro's $400 anymore, and that doesn't even fly. So this is a pretty substantial drone that if you're wanting to do some basic scouting on your farm or ranch, or maybe you're in the real estate industry or banking or insurance, this thing packs a lot of punch. More than a 20-minute flight time. And look at this automation. I've flown the drone back and watch the detail here on the screen recording. There's a little arrow I'm going to push that's for down, and you'll watch it come up on the screen. There it is right there. I hold the button down. Auto landing.
Landing.
And truly, that's one of the best things about this drone. Anyone can use it. And because of its compact size, it makes it super handy to take with you really anywhere. Remember, with any drone, make sure you do your homework. If you have any questions, check out the website FAA Drone Zone to learn all the latest about making sure that you fly safe.
Thanks, Chad. It is always good advice to know the rules and regulations. Check them out at faadronezone.faa.gov. Welcome back to This Week in Agribusiness. Conservation takes different forms across the country. Different farmers with different soil profiles and different needs on their operations use different types of conservation. The American Soybean Association seeks to recognize that with the Conservation Legacy Award winners, and we're meeting them each week.
Step outside with Jim Isley and his son Jake. They're likely showing off a project they're working on.
I guess one of the mottos that we have is let's find out what we don't know.
The idea to uncover and improve the land started generations before them. The Isley family has farmed in southeast Michigan for more than 150 years. It was Jim's father and grandfather who realized some practices are better than others. Jim has now adapted that to a conservation mindset at Sunrise Farms, the farm he now operates with his wife and son in Lenawee County.
It's important to me that if my children want to farm, that I give them the opportunity to do so, not just financially, but having them have the land in better condition than what I got it.
But it wasn't until recently they decided to do more.
It really wasn't until the last 12 to 15 years where we began to actually say, what kinds of practices can we implement that will help us to achieve this goal?
They now strip till and no-till 100% of their acres. It allows them to apply all of their nutrients subsurface. They soil sample a lot.
Soil sampling, although it sounds excessive, I think I want to keep right on it.
They use cover crops on a majority of their acres, primarily an annual ryegrass mix. Yet the largest conservation change may have come from studying the farm's proximity to Lake Erie, which the Isley family says is 30 miles due east.
We're so close to Lake Erie and everything that we have is tile drained. I'm farming differently knowing that I want to put that nutrient right where that crop's going to need it and that it has the smallest chance of getting away.
The family was already years into conservation practices before 2014 when an algae bloom led to a temporary shutdown of Toledo, Ohio's water supply. The Isleys say the water quality issue put a spotlight on farming practices, both positive and negative, and how they affect water quality. It's also why Jim now serves on a local watershed council. The situation gave the family a platform to showcase their practices, hosting political folks from the state of Michigan and USDA.
The end goal would be not only to make the farm and keep the farm sustainable, but to encourage others to try conservation practices.
The Isleys plan to implement a drainage water management plan across the farm. They're monitoring that water for quality and nutrient levels through a multi-year study with Michigan State University, the Michigan Department of Agriculture, and Michigan DNR.
We don't know what we're going to find, but you create a hypothesis and you try to prove it. And so we anticipate that the site that is controlled drainage will have less nutrient loss.
As the Isleys show you what they're doing, the goal is continuous improvement.
And we're here for the long haul. We're here in order to have something that will go beyond us.
Congratulations to Jim Isley and the Isley family, a regional American Soybean Association Conservation Legacy Award winner.
Congratulations to the Isley family for showing just how conservation can work into a crop plan. Well, I tell you, those Isleys are up in Michigan, and Greg, taking a look at the drought monitor.
My goodness.
Boy, they are dry, but they're not the worst place. It's North Dakota, it's the West Coast. This drought is serious. Greg, what's going on?
Yeah, surprising. And even about a week to 10 days ago, had significant rains in through Michigan, and this is the best we can do on that drought monitor in that beige or moderate drought category. Note how it teleconnects back still into parts of southern Wisconsin, northern Illinois. We've seen a little bit of an increase now into parts of southeast Illinois as well. Note as well, coming off what has been a wet spell during the course of the late fall and winter season in the southeast. Some dryness there, but yeah, look at the bullseye, multiple bullseyes centered on North Dakota, back across the southwest, and reemerging again across the Pacific Northwest, where we did have some modest improvement a few weeks ago.
Well, absolutely. And Greg, one of the things that we talk about when we get into discussing drought, and of course I'm a layman, you live and breathe this science, the droughts typically move from west to east. Is this something you anticipate moving across the Corn Belt this summer?
I think so, especially those western through central and southern areas. Eastern locales should be able to get by, perhaps even in excess mode, into parts of Indiana, Ohio. Yes, we do foresee improvement in Michigan and Wisconsin, parts of the Dakotas, but the bullseye, that western half of the country, 85% plus in that severe drought or exceptional drought category, no improvement. You do not get to see an improvement there or expect an improvement until you get into what we would consider the rainy season or an El Nino weather pattern, none of which until, with the exception now, mind you, of the monsoon season. That is spotty, though, at best, until we get into typically the October, November timeframe of this fall and beyond.
Now, the flip side of the coin, of course, of drought is too much moisture, which has been the plague for growers across the southeast. Are they going to get a little dryness as we look out here to the future?
Yeah, and some of that could very well expand over parts of Georgia, the southeastern states. Meanwhile, some of these areas that are wet now through parts of the Corn Belt likely to stay that way. There'll be some modest improvement in the short term across the Dakotas, but again, that'll have to be watched, especially about the Bismarck area on westward. To the east, there should be improvement. And the Canadian Prairie, by the way, dry, frosty as well across that part of the hemisphere.
All right, lots of things going on. We'll check back in with Greg later on in the program. And stay with us. We'll talk plant health with BASF.
This Week in Agribusiness, serving America's most essential industry, is brought to you by Firestone. You never farm alone.
Thanks for joining us here on This Week in Agribusiness. Plant health has become a little bit of a buzzword. We're hearing it in a lot of different marketing materials. Well, Max had the chance to dive into what plant health means with our friends from BASF.
A lot of products make plant health claims. Is there a difference?
BASF is unique in that we were the only ones that submitted an actual dossier to the EPA to get a supplemental label for plant health specifically, above and beyond disease control. You know, if I had a disease and I took medicine to cure that disease, well, I'm healthier for it. So just like any fungicide, if that plant is cured of a disease because it cures a disease, it's healthier. So yeah, they can say that they have plant health. They make that plant healthier. The specific part of it, though, where we impact the health of the crop above and beyond disease control, that is unique. Nobody else can stand on that like BASF can.
Are there regions where plant health is even more important than others? Are there certain parts of the country where maybe growers are more sensitive to plant health, or where it's more important to their operation?
Plant health really encompasses three main things, right? There's the disease control, the stress tolerance and stress mitigation, and then also the growth efficiency. So really, you can be absolutely anywhere, and plant health matters to that crop and that farmer, because one of those factors is always going to be at play.
We have a great example out in Colorado where this field was hailed out, and they went and real quick put Preaxor fungicide on it 4 days after. And then all of a sudden, the corn oats tree with Preaxor just bounced back, starts greening up, starts growing again, because of what it's doing inside the plant. And so
when there's been physical damage.
Physical damage
to the plant.
Absolutely.
How far along was that corn? Do you recall?
About V5-ish, V6 corn, something like that. Yeah. And it was just, man, throughout the season, I think it turned out to be 15 plus bushel increase from just helping that plant overcome the hail stress there.
What about soybeans? Is there anything that comes to mind there?
Being in North Carolina, unfortunately, we get a lot of hurricanes. And I was working with a farmer, and he had a trial with our Revitec fungicide out there, and had applied the fungicide, and then this hurricane came through. The difference in where he applied that fungicide and where he didn't was striking, and it was all from this salt injury of all of these, minerals and chloride and magnesium and everything that can get in that salt spray and cause damage to the soybeans. And it was just such a profound effect and example of how plant health really can be seen in action that's completely unrelated to disease.
You can see all of the videos in the Plan Smart Grow Smart series by visiting the website at plansmartgrowsmart.com.
Now, agriculture meteorologist Greg Solier brings us his farm weather forecast for the nation for the week ahead. It's presented by Pivot BioProven, the nitrogen-producing microbes that stay put, whether or not.
Well, it's time to dig into the weather. Greg, as you look out to the Pacific Northwest, is it expected to be quiet this week?
Pretty quiet. A couple of frontal boundaries on the move. And of course, we are out of the wet season, the stormy season in the Pacific Northwest. From time to time, a trough comes on by. We generate a shower or two, a little snow on the highest peaks. That's really it. This time of the year, this particular setup, not conducive for organized moisture. And despite the warm front and a couple of clusters of showers and thunderstorms and dryness concerns and drought through the Canadian prairie, just a nibble in anyone's rain gauge out across the Dakotas for this week. We do see that warm front heading to the north and northeast. Cooler air back through Big Sky country, northern and central parts of the Rockies. Stray shower to the Pacific Northwest. It's pretty much status quo if you've been able to work with it. Winter wheat fields and certainly summer crops out there. Do the best you can. There's just absolutely nothing in sight to curtail or even improve the drought in that part of the country. And it applies to over the southwestern part of the country, kind of a windy weather system making its way most of the organized moisture, and it's scant at best where we do need additional moisture in the severe drought area. But again, fast moving and scattered. That weather system will blow through the southwestern states, move into the plains with time later in the week. A deeper moisture profile from Nebraska and southward. Some shower and thunderstorm activity there. Back to high pressure in the southwest. And of course, you've read about it, you heard about it, you're experienced it already. Heavy irrigation demand already across the southwest and diminishing snowpack as we speak.
That is true. Farmers in the Corn Belt, Greg, have been running hard getting corn and soybean seeds in the ground, and those seeds need a little heat. Any of that on the forecast?
Yeah, hopefully if you didn't go crazy and plant during March when we had those 70s and 80s and things were up, you didn't get burned back with the frost and freeze, which has been a story along with drought into the Canadian prairie too. High and dry, but a gusty southeast wind. And here's a northbound warm front and some shower activity and a few thunderstorms. Don't think it's a severe weather period this week, but at times there'll be some slow-moving storms offset by a number of rain-free hours. And in effect, still some opportunity for planting, but moisture in pretty good coverage and fashion in these drier areas of the Great Lakes region, including Michigan, middle to late portions of the week. Slow-moving frontal boundaries southwest to northeast jet, and it feels like May for a change from the Ohio back into Texas. Showers and thunderstorms continue on here. Some localized drought improvement, including those high plains areas with very little change in the overall steering currents into the Delta region and points out of the east, the middle and late portions of the week.
What are you thinking, Greg, as you look all the way to the east coast?
The last of the frost and freeze moving out of the northeast to New England. Here's that warm front and attendant shower and a couple of thunderstorm outbreaks as well on the move from south to north, feeling like it ought to be, putting the warmth back into the soils here. And where you're okay with soil moisture, some good crop growth and development and opportunities around the moisture to generate some planting operations across a good part of the Corn Belt. Back to dry time and increasing dryness here over this part of the country. Note the showers and thunderstorms back across the Delta region. They will be on the increase, including some of the dry areas of Florida, middle to late portions of the week.
Now, Greg Solier is back with his extended farm weather forecast for the country. Presented by Pivot Bio Proven. Visit pivotbio.com to find a representative near you.
Well, Greg, I know a lot of farmers are watching the sky looking for some moisture.
Yep.
Do you have any in your next week's forecast?
We do for parts of the Great Lakes region. We don't have much to speak of across the Dakotas, and it might be a little bit too much in some of the lingering wet soils as it applies to the eastern and southern Corn Belt. This is good news over the southeastern part of the country, a little drier than we'd like to see down through the Gulf Coast area. There is a moisture fetch running from Texas into the upper Midwest. There'll be some rainfall, scattered at best, primarily Red River back to the west, but hardly anything in the gauge, and maybe a couple of showers into parts of the Pacific Northwest where that drought pattern is months away from improving.
Yeah, that is going to be a tough row to hoe. Greg, what do you see for the end of May?
Not bad if you are in the ground and you've got adequate soil moisture. This is pretty good news. Temperatures a bit above average. Certainly sure beats the frost and freeze, mind you, where there might be still even a late season patch in parts of the Canadian Prairie. That's been a dry and cold weather pattern. Warmth to the east and across the western states and down into the Rio Grande as well. Precipitation, we do have a little fetch of moisture along a boundary that'll be setting up here from the Ohio on northward. So some fairly good news, especially as it applies to the Dakotas, parts of the Great Lakes region. Wet as well down through Florida, back to dry time and little improvement here for the west, and still lingering dryness and drought into parts of the northeast and New England.
As June gets underway, Greg, does it feel like summer?
It should be. Hopefully, it'll be the start, at least meteorologically speaking, of summertime. A little sliver of cool air up towards the Sioux. Temperatures about normal. Heart of the Corn Belt, west of the Missouri, there's some heat involved all the way down to the Gulf Coast and parts of the southeastern part of the country. And from a moisture standpoint, good news for the Canadian Prairie, parts of North Dakota, some of the drier reaches to the Great Lakes into the northeast of New England might begin to get a little bit too wet into some of these far eastern Corn Belt locales. Normal precip for much of the Great Plains. High and dry, lots of yellow still from California southward in through Texas.
And finally, Greg, what do you see from that period, June 6th to the 13th?
Don't see anything really with a heat wave sense in order. Temperatures a few degrees above average southern plains, southeastern part of the country into the western states. This little puddle of pool of cool air still lingers through the Great Lakes region, a little buckle in the jet. So we think organized wet weather for the Great Lakes areas. This is maybe still some good news. Last of maybe some delayed planting in this corridor. Normal precip over the southeastern part of the country. Look at the dry time and drought continuing on from California into Texas.
Next on This Week in Agribusiness, it's Max's Tractor Shed, spotlighting another great American tractor.
Some of you, when the picture comes up in the Tractor Shed segment this weekend, will say, wait a minute, Max, they didn't make one of those. And you'll be right. Max's Tractor Shed is brought to you by Store Lock Tool Cabinets. It's quality through and through, top to bottom. Check them out at storelock.com. Ollie Schaefer was a big fan of the Oliver brand. He had to be. His dad had been an Oliver dealer, and he was named after the brand. Many of you would see him perhaps at the Louisville Farm Show. He would be standing in the Heritage Iron booth alongside his daughter, Sherry Schaefer. Ollie passed away just a little more than a year ago, but they're selling his equipment at an auction in Greenville, Illinois, and this is one of them. Look at this. This is an XO 8888. The X for experimental, the O for Oliver, 8888 because Ali took 2 of his 88s and put them together into this unique machine. He loved creating unique tractors. Many folks fondly remember, including yours truly, Ali Schaefer. Well, they have some great late model equipment crossing the block each week at Big Iron Auctions. Here's Mark Stock to fill us in on what we can expect in the week ahead.
Well, Max, we are in May, and the auctions are just as strong as ever on BigIron.com. We've got 1,550 items selling May 19th. Garland Pike is retiring from Trenton, North Carolina. He's got a Case IH MXM 190 mechanical front tractor and a Case IH MX 110 mechanical front tractor. 2XZ Ranch LLC out of Humphrey, Nebraska will be selling a John Deere S670 combine. K&O Farms out of Antlers, Oklahoma. They've got a Massey Ferguson 9635 self-propelled windrower. Mark Schrock from Hazleton, Kansas. They've got 2 John Deere 9600 combines. They've got a John Deere 4720 sprayer. They've also got a John Deere 1860 air seeder with a 1910 commodity cart. Deuce Construction out of Illinois. They've got a Caterpillar 928C wheel loader, a John Deere 350 DLC excavator. Check out their Ingersoll Rand telehandler. And Darrell Miller from Arlington, Nebraska. They've got some horse-drawn equipment, plus an International Farmall Super M. They've got a John Deere Model B and a Farmall F20. Max, all this equipment sells on BigIron.com on May the 19th.
The FFA Chapter Tribute is sponsored by Nationwide, the #1 farm insurer in the country. To register your FFA chapter, go to nationwidesupportsffa.com. That's nationwidesupportsffa.com. Nationwide, we stand for you.
This Week in Agribusiness is proud to continue our salute to FFA, and we've been getting to know the crew down at the Georgia FFA. Joining us this week is Caitlin Davis. She's the state secretary for Georgia FFA. Caitlin, what was it that prompted you to get involved with FFA?
Well, I knew going into middle school that I wanted to be a veterinarian, but I had no idea how to get there. And one of my neighbors was actually an FFA and showed goats, and I thought that was the coolest thing ever. So awkward, shy Caitlin walked up to the ag class and joined, and I've been hooked ever since.
And you mentioned being awkward and shy in middle school, and here you are, a college freshman, state FFA secretary. What was it like working your way up the leadership?
I never would have expected to be speaking in front of crowds of thousands of people, let alone on TV or any of that. So it was really unique to get to work with so many students from so many different backgrounds and walks of life that weren't from my hometown in Effingham. So it was very unique to meet so many people that had so many different stories.
Absolutely. Can you tell us a little bit about what your role was as state secretary this past year?
So as state secretary, we all served on the team together, and we served as ag ambassadors, which means we were promoting agriculture, working on ag literacy, helping folks know where their food comes from, what they can do to support the industry. We also worked with over 70,000 students in Georgia FFA, virtually and in person, because it was a weird year this year for sure. A lot of Zoom conferences and workshops. And we did leadership events, we did career development events, where folks can really work on their passions in agriculture. And so it's been a really unique year, but we got to speak to a lot of folks.
You got out there, you talked to folks. Thank you so much. Caitlin Davis, Georgia FFA.
Now, Samuelson Says. Insight and commentary from Orion Samuelson.
Thanks to the vaccine, we're making some progress against COVID-19. There are many agricultural events on the summer and fall schedule, and hopefully they can make it on time. Let me go through the list of some of the scheduled events for agriculture. World Pork Expo, Des Moines, Iowa, June 9 through 11. Wisconsin Farm Technology Days, July 20 through 22. The Farm Progress Show, scheduled for August 31 through September 2. Husker Harvest Days, September 14 through 16. The Ohio Farm Science Review, the September 21 through 23 dates. World Dairy Expo, Madison, Wisconsin, September 28 to October 2. Sunbelt Ag Expo, October 19 through 21. And on the state fair schedule, Indiana, July 30 through August 22. Wisconsin State Fair, August 5 through 15. Illinois, August 12 through 22. Missouri, August 12 through 22. Minnesota, August 26 through September 6. Those are events on the schedule, and I suggest if you're planning to attend, before you leave, check with the sponsors of the events to make sure that they're still underway, because that's changeable anytime depending on the rules that the state legislatures and the governors make concerning COVID-19. So enjoy this summer schedule, but check first, and here's to your health. Be safe, be well. My thoughts on Samuelson Says.
May, of course, is Mental Health Awareness Month. We've been exploring the challenges that surround mental health in agriculture over the past few weeks. And this week, Max continues our conversation with Adrian DeSutter talking about stress.
Yeah, I think most of us assume, Mike, that the times when mental challenges are most prominent in the farming community would parallel those times when the ag economy is under pressure. That certainly makes sense, and that is indeed one of those times when farmers are hurting. But Adrian DeSutter points out that even when prices are elevated, there can be plenty of stresses, mental stresses on farmers too.
You know, money is tough to talk about, isn't it? Especially on a farm family where, again, it's kind of a hush-hush thing that we don't talk about with other families. But when it comes to mental health in agricultural, there is always going to be stress. It doesn't matter if there's money there or not. You know, we live a life that's a little bit isolated, so we lack some connection sometimes. We have those family issues when you're working closely with your family that you're going to have stress about. We always have the idea that we have to live up to the generation before us, or if you're a new farmer, you know, that idea that you took all of this risk. What happens if it doesn't work? So the stress is just part of the lifestyle, and we need to keep it in control. But when it comes to finances, even when things are going well, when your markets are looking good, there's still that guilt sometimes, or that worry sometimes, like, well, maybe I shouldn't have sold early, or how long should I hang on before I sell? There's always the, well, why did I buy the farm last year and look at the prices now, you know? So there's a lot of potential for people to kind of beat up on themselves, when really we have to understand that some of this is a little bit of a gamble. You have to be make educated decisions, certainly when it comes to finances, but you also have to understand that there are some things that are just beyond your control with that fluctuation.
We have to be mindful too, don't we, Adrian, about airing our family dirty laundry out among others. And I say this because I think of all generations maybe we're susceptible to this. Older folks can be visiting at the coffee shop in town and slip something into the conversation. Conversely, I saw a tweet a few weeks ago where a young farmer was venting his spleen about his father and the challenges of headbutting, and that was right out there in public. That's not helpful, is it?
You know, I see it a couple different ways. I think that, again, communication is so important. And if the first time we're communicating an issue is on Twitter or on Facebook or in social media, I don't think that that's necessarily the best way to go about it. That said, on the opposite, I think it's really healthy for farmers to understand that they don't have to be so isolated and keep everything in to themselves. I think that sometimes being able to vent about their frustrations is a stress reliever. So we have to find a safe way to do that and a helpful way to do that. And just complaining on Facebook isn't necessarily the best start for that. But I do think it's okay for us to share with each other that we all have struggles and we all have similar stories when it comes to our stress. So there's a connectedness that happens on especially on social media, but anytime I give a presentation on mental health and we share about some of those things that are kind of hush-hush, the connectedness is just really wild. It's oh my gosh, I didn't realize I wasn't the only one going through that. So, yes, I think we have to be a little bit careful the avenue that we do that. And again, I think going to the source when you have an issue, going directly to someone and talking things out with someone is really important. But, that we have to be careful not to just hold everything in all the time, or it just kind of bottles up and fuels inside of us.
Adrian said, quite often a farmer wants to be helpful. They want to reach out somehow, but they don't know how to go about it. She said, you don't have to be a doctor. You don't have to be a therapist to be helpful to a farmer friend. Just let them know that you're there to be a listening ear, Mike.
Thank you, Max. That is great advice. We're there to be a listening ear to our friends in need. Thanks to all of you for tuning in this week to This Week in Agribusiness. I'm Mike Pearson, happy to be working with Max and Orion. Join us next week when we'll be back right here.
Closed captioning for This Week in Agribusiness is brought to you by Kubota. Shape your world. This Week in Agribusiness is brought to you by Firestone. You never farm alone. This Week in Agribusiness is produced by Omax Communications in association with 22 Creative Group. We invite you to visit us online at agbizweek.com.